Hello everybody and welcome to the Gaming Grappler. Last year at the Game Awards was the first time I have ever seen a mainstream Western audience get hype as hell about the prospect of playing a mecha video game. It is my belief that Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, has the potential to revive and revitalize the mecha genre. But before I get into why or how, please like, comment, and subscribe to the Gaming Grappler. The more this channel grows, the more time, effort, and dedication I can bring into giving content to you guys on a consistent and regular basis. So I'm just going to state this as bluntly as possible, but the mecha genre has been in steep decline for a long time. Even in Japan, which is a little peculiar considering that the Japanese thought it was worth it to build two giant life-sized replica Gundam robots. I mean, just think about the logistics and the planning of what it must have took to build those things. I mean, there must have been zoning documents, government contracts required, millions of dollars on the line to build those things. And even over there, with that much hard work and dedication for the mecha genre and concept, even in Japan, mecha seems to be dying out. It seems to me that the only two popular mecha properties coming out there are established brands like Gundam or Code Geass. But it didn't always used to be like that. It used to be that every year there would be a new and original mecha show coming out there that had its own original take on what it would be like to control a giant robot. And there would be a new video game coming out that also had its own unique take and concept of what mecha gameplay could feel like and play like. But that just doesn't seem to be happening anymore. Even in Japan, the mecha genre has once again become a niche hobby and an interest. Now, I want to give Western writers and developers a little bit of credit here because there has been this gigantic push in the last 10 or so years to normalize and popularize the mecha genre. Ready Player One, whether you like that movie or not, was a huge mainstream success, and it heavily featured Gundam in most of the promotional material. The very first Pacific Rim is one of the best entry points in the mecha genre. If you want to understand the appeal of why you would want to pilot a giant robot, watch that movie. It was directed by Guillermo del Toro, one of the greatest directors of all time, who is personally quite overqualified to be making a giant robot Hollywood blockbuster, but he did it. But please, skip out on the sequel. Pacific Rim 2 was not directed by him, and it was a huge, gigantic, flaming pile of trash, but that's for another video. And then you had big budget video game studios like Electronic Arts, and I can't believe I'm going to state this, made two of the best mecha games ever created. Titanfall 1 and 2 are some of the best multiplayer shooters you could play right now. And the reward for playing well in those games is you'll get rewarded by controlling your own giant robot where you could stomp out other players. It's just awesome. And the mechs were heavily featured in most of the commercials and promotional material for that game. But despite this big push in the West, the mecha genre, for whatever reason, just hasn't been able to resonate with mainstream Western audience. It has never really gotten a foothold in the West. So here's my hot take for the video. I believe that Armored Core 6 has the potential to revitalize the mecha genre in the East and finally gain that foothold in the West. And my main reason for thinking this is based solely on who's developing the game. FromSoftware is the greatest developer of our generation. I'm stating that as a fact. Right now, FromSoft is at the same place that Capcom was in the 90s, where their name is a golden seal of quality. You can see this reflected in the fact that FromSoftware games routinely sweep up Game of the Year awards, and their games are heavily featured on video hosting websites and streaming services. When Elden Ring first came out, it was on the front page of Twitch for months, and it became Twitch's most popular streamed game that year. FromSoftware has a golden reputation, and it's a reputation that they earned because they didn't start out as a billion-dollar company. They started out as a middle market developer developing games specifically for niche audiences, but there's a genuine passion and dedication when it came to making those games. There was hard work, effort, and artistry when it came to designing those games. Dark Souls was one of those games, and it should have never become the mainstream hit and success it is today because it came out in the 7th generation, and it came out at a time when the main school of thought from developers and publishers alike were that video games were shameful and that they should be more like movies. And there's this huge push for cinematic gameplay that was easy and full of QuickTime events. And a huge percentage of those games were full of long cutscenes where a huge emphasis was put on making them like movies, where they were voiced by celebrity voice actors. And here Dark Souls was aggressively a video game. There are no hour-long cutscenes in Dark Souls or tutorials to explain what's happening. There's just one short cutscene at the beginning of the game to give the players some context as to what they should be doing, and one at the end as a reward for finishing the game. Otherwise, players are on their own, and Dark Souls was this non-linear, esoteric, and confusing game. And most of the story was told through environmental storytelling, where players would have to pay attention to their surroundings and the landscapes to find out what was happening. They would have to read item descriptions and figure out what was happening like they were some sort of archaeologist. And the gameplay was brutally difficult. This was a game where there was a huge penalty for dying, where you would lose your souls, and souls weren't just a currency for buying items, they were what you used to level up your character. So there were consequences for failing in the game, and it was a type of difficulty that we haven't seen since playing games on the SNES or Sega Genesis. And this resonated with people. For the first time in forever, mainstream audiences realized that there was this reward for overcoming a challenge, that when victory wasn't guaranteed, it meant all the more when you actually won. And there was a real genuine reward to actually seeing yourself grow as a player and get better at playing video games. It seems like the entire gaming industry just decided to pull a 180 over the night and just accept the FromSoft formula, where you will see big budget developers and publishers alike chomping at the bit to call their game the Dark Souls of whatever the hell they're publishing at the time. Think about what Sekiro is. Sekiro is a FromSoft game published by Activision, one of the biggest publishers in the industry. It's basically an acknowledgement that the FromSoft formula works. Think about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Star Wars is the most popular and influential cinematic franchise in existence. And when it came time to base a modern video game off that franchise, they decided to go with the Dark Souls formula. Think about how crazy that is. So my main point here, the reason why this video even exists is just to point out here that FromSoftware is one of the most competent and capable development studios out there, run by people like Hidetaka Miyazaki and Masaru Yamamura. These are very talented game developers, and these guys managed to change and alter the gaming landscape at a point when all the money and interest groups fought to the contrary. I believe that these guys have the ability, that this studio is fully capable of reviving and revitalizing the mecha genre, not just in the East, but even in the West. All right, so Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, is not the first Armored Core game to come out. There were 5 other games before it and some spin-off games, but all those predecessor games never really got popular with mainstream audiences. So what'll separate Armored Core 6 from the rest of the series? And that big factor is the experience factor. FromSoft as a studio is still helmed by the same people. You know, you got Hidetaka Miyazaki and Masaru Yamamura. These guys are still at the helm of things, but their studio has grown over time. They have more experience making hit games. They've got more money, their staff has increased, and they got more time, effort, and dedication that they could put to bring their vision for Armored Core and make it palatable for the masses. Armored Core has a lot to offer mainstream audiences. It's a game that has 2 different styles of gameplay that perfectly intertwine with one another. There is building and customizing your own personal robot, and then there's actually piloting and using that robot in combat. Both styles of gameplay heavily rely off one another. The way you build your robot will affect the way it moves in combat, and the customization options are nearly limitless. You can get lost just designing the cosmetic factors alone. Like, you could spend hours just building and designing your own emblem for a robot. It's pretty crazy, and my own description here isn't doing the game justice. You know, lore and story have never really been a big focal point for Armored Core, but it's pretty creative and unique. In the Armored Core universe, there are no good guys. It has the same sort of tone and atmosphere of Metal Gear Solid 4, where war is not being fought by nations or ideology. It's being fought by mercenaries at the behest of corporations. It kind of has the same vibe as Warhammer 40k, where the entire universe is based around the premise of there being never-ending conflict. All right, I think that covers pretty much everything I want to say about Armored Core 6, but in short, FromSoftware is such a godlike studio and so competent and capable that if anybody could revive the mecha genre, not just in the East, but even make it work in the West, it's them. They can do it. They've got the power.